Hi, I'm Dr. Jean Fourie, and in this presentation, I would like to tell you about a study that we did that was published in 2020 in the African Journal of Disability. The study is about learning support strategies for learners with neurodevelopmental disorders, and we looked at the perspectives of recently qualified teachers. The study was conducted by Jane Yarrow, and myself and Dr. van der Merwe were the supervisors. Neurodevelopmental disorders are a group of conditions that manifest in the childhood developmental period. These are complex disorders, and they include a wide range of difficulties: autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, specific learning disorders such as dyslexia and dyscalculia, and intellectual disability, and communication and motor disorders such as Tourette's syndrome. Neurodevelopmental disorders are associated with atypical brain functioning, and this affects the child's behavior, memory, and their ability to learn. These difficulties are complex, and they add serious challenges for teachers who are educating children in everyday classrooms. Mostly, learners who have neurodevelopmental learning disorders are taught in special needs schools. If these difficulties are profound and severe, then these children will be accommodated in special schools. However, we know that there has been an increase in the number of children who have mild to moderate neurodevelopmental disorders, and more of these children are attending mainstream schools. In South Africa, our Education White Paper 6, which was published by the Department of Education in 2001, posits that all learners should be granted access to education regardless of their disabilities. And as a country, South Africa is committed to an inclusive education system. This poses challenges and difficulties for teachers who thus need to include and educate children with neurodiversity in their mainstream classrooms. Previous studies on neurodevelopmental prevalence have shown that there is a wide range and there is a high incidence of certain disabilities in certain countries. For instance, research conducted in India indicates that intellectual disability and autism spectrum disorder are prevalent in their schools. In Taiwan, a study found that autism, ADHD, and mental retardation are mostly common. A study conducted in Norway showed that autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and epilepsy are the most prevalent neurodevelopmental disorders in that country and seem to be more common amongst male children. So the aim of this study was to investigate learning support strategies used by recently qualified teachers. And we chose recently qualified teachers because we wanted to see if they were able to understand and implement what they had been taught in their primary teaching qualification. So we were looking at what strategies they are using to accommodate children with NDDs in mainstream classrooms. And a secondary aim was to investigate the prevalent neurodevelopmental disorders in these classrooms in South Africa. The methodology that we used was two-phased. In the quantitative phase, we distributed a questionnaire to 100 newly qualified teachers in the Gauteng province. The teachers completed the questionnaire, which looked at what were the most prevalent NDDs in their mainstream classrooms and asked them various biographical information about themselves and their classrooms. This data was analyzed using descriptive statistics. In the second phase of the study, this was qualitative. 6 teachers were selected from these 100 using purposeful criteria. They needed to be teaching in a mainstream secondary school, and they needed to have some indication of learners with neurodevelopmental disorders in their classroom. These 6 teachers were invited for individual semi-structured interviews. And in addition, observations were conducted in their classrooms. The teachers were also asked to write a critical incident report. They were asked to look at some incident that had occurred in their classroom with learners with NDD and to say what had happened and how they had supported those particular children. The data from the qualitative phase was inductively analyzed to form themes. The findings on the most challenging neurodevelopmental disorders found that these teachers struggle greatly with these children in their classrooms. In the questionnaire, more than 80% of the teachers said that they struggle with children who have presenting symptoms of neurodevelopmental disorders in their classrooms. The most challenging NDDs that they found were ADHD. 40% of the NDDs were ADHD, and the most prevalent of the NDDs, 80%, was specific learning disorders. There were a smattering of various others: autism spectrum disorder, children with emotional difficulties. ADHD was very prevalent, 40% of the NDDs. There were various other conditions that were noted: difficulties with sensory and motor movement difficulties, but not so many, and intellectual disabilities. So the most prevalent in the classrooms was specific learning disabilities, which relates to difficulties with reading, writing, mathematics, spelling, and difficulties with ADHD, with attention, concentration, and hyperactivity. So specific learning disorders and ADHD seem to be the most prevalent in South African classrooms. We also looked at the severity of NDDs in the mainstream classrooms, and we found that the severity level was mostly in the mild and moderate range. So of the NDDs that were recorded, 44% of them were in the mild moderate range. But teachers claimed that there were also learners in their classrooms that had more severe and profound difficulties. So the mild and the moderate were the most common, but there were also indications that there were some learners in these mainstream classrooms who were presenting with quite severe difficulties. The teachers also reported that they do provide learning support for their learners with NDDs. So the majority of these newly qualified teachers, more than 80% of them, are reporting some learning support strategies in their classrooms. They are also reporting more than 60% of them are also reporting that they are providing assessment accommodations for learners with NDD. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. In the qualitative part of the study, where we looked at the interviews that were held with the teachers, we were looking to see what was their understanding of NDDs. And they understood that these are difficulties that occur in children during childhood development. There are difficulties associated with brain functioning, cognitive challenges, resulting in difficulties with reading, writing, and learning. One of the teachers said, "My major problem in the classroom is reading, writing, and spelling, because even the two learners I have with ADHD, they also struggle to spell, pronounce words, and write." Another teacher said, "I see ADHD as prevalent. The learners are moving up and down, consistently disrupting others, very, very restless, and find it difficult to concentrate, to do schoolwork. They are not sitting at a place." So we can see that the teachers are battling with children who are having difficulty attending, concentrating, and with their classroom behavior. The teachers' experiences of these disorders is that they found them in general disruptive and challenging to deal with, and these are some of the thoughts that they had. These disorders are quite challenging, but somehow I learn every day by trying to see how I can do my best to accommodate these learners. So even though the challenge is there, she was rising to assist them. I try to support my learners, but sometimes I can't meet up with their needs because I also have deadlines to catch up with, and I have a very large class size. So the teachers are trying to assist, but we know that they have challenges with fulfilling the curriculum and difficulties with large numbers of children in mainstream classes. This teacher said, "I thought the mainstream classroom had learners with good learning and academic performance, but to my greatest surprise, I saw the opposite. Seeing learners with ADHD and dyslexia in the classroom is a very big surprise to me." Another teacher said, "I have learners who cannot write correctly. The spellings are way too wrong for his age, and they do not read and understand the questions." So we can see that teachers are trying to assist these learners and that they are really struggling with how to do this. In the qualitative part of the study, we also looked at support strategies that teachers are using to assist these learners in their classrooms. Cooperative learning groups was used a lot. One teacher said, "I make them work in groups, and I walk round and round my class a lot. I want to see everything if they are doing it properly." Learners with ADHD were noted to respond well to leadership roles in the group work, as this helped them to focus on the task. They also said that group work helped with discipline and encouraged equal participation of all learners. In cooperative learning groups, learners learn to work with and to learn from their peers. A second strategy that was reported was using a lot of visual aids. A teacher said, "I use lots of pictures to help them understand. My kids draw a lot and their learning has improved." The use of visual aids allows learners to have a mental and a visual picture of what is being taught. A third strategy that the teachers used was curriculum differentiation. This was the use of different curricula to assist these learners with neurodevelopmental learning problems. One teacher referred to this as an intervention class, and in this class, she would break down the content into small chunks. She would use mind maps to organize the facts and take time to explain the difficult concepts to the learners, going back through the basics, the things that they had missed to explain to them what was happening. This differentiation often took the form of individualized attention or attention in small groups. It allowed extra time at a slower pace to assist with working through the content. The next strategy that teachers used was peer learning. A teacher said, "This peer learning really works, especially when I peer the strong and the weak learners together. You see them teaching each other and engaging nicely with themselves. It is another way that these learners receive support." So the teachers are using the strategy where they are pairing a stronger and a weaker learner together. The one learner teaches the other one, and the one who is weaker feels comfortable to ask questions and to see where they do not understand. This strategy improves the oral communication of both learners as they are both speaking and having an opportunity to talk through the content. It also assists to improve the self-esteem and the confidence of the weaker and the stronger learner. So peer learning is a really good strategy to employ. Then another thing that the teachers did was oral assessments. One teacher said, "I have learners who struggle to read and write correctly, so I assess them orally. I bring them to me." She brings them to her in the front of the classroom, "and I listen to them. And the moment I see that they are able to understand, she gives them some kind of a mark or finds out what they're able to understand instead of failing them." So learners who are unable to read and write correctly because they have a specific learning disability might be failed in a test which is only written to reading and writing, but they might understand the work, and then an oral, quick oral assessment would be appropriate. Another strategy that the teachers used was ability grouping. This is where they group learners according to their academic performance. So children who have difficulty or who are all struggling with the same thing will be grouped together. So those with difficulty in reading and writing can then receive personal support from the teacher. And one teacher said, bit by bit. So she focuses and she can pay more attention to the group that is the weaker group that is struggling. The ability groupings worked very well in the maths classes, where the weaker learners were put together and then taken through some concepts, some work that they had missed and had not understood. When using ability groupings, teachers should be aware that learners do not become stigmatized, particularly the learners in the lower ability groups. They can often get labeled as the slow or the dumb learners, the learners who are weak, and so we do not want the stigmatization. Teachers must be very careful how they put together the ability groupings. So the implications of this study is that in general, newly qualified teachers in South Africa have a good understanding of what neurodevelopmental learning needs and disorders entail. These teachers are also willing and very able to accommodate and to support learners in their mainstream classrooms using a variety of practical teaching strategies. These newly qualified teachers understood the importance of including diverse learners with differentiated groupings and modified teaching practices in their classrooms. So they understood how important it was to include and to give quality education to every learner in their classroom. These findings imply that teacher training programs should prepare teachers to effectively meet the needs of the prevalent NDDs in their classrooms. And these are related to attention deficit problems, to problems with specific learning disabilities such as reading, writing, mathematics, spelling. So we know that these are the common ones occurring in our classrooms. And so teacher training programs should have some aspect of assisting with how to deal with attention problems and how to assist learners who are having difficulty with reading, writing, spelling, and mathematics in their classrooms. So we would like to acknowledge that this study was undertaken as part of the studies for the Center for Educating Children with Neurodevelopmental Learning Needs at the Department of Educational Psychology at the Faculty of Education at the University of Johannesburg. It was also undertaken with a Global Excellence Scholarship for Jane Yarrow, who conducted the research. And we would like to acknowledge the supervision and the writing and assistance by Jean Fourie and Martijn van der Merwe. Thank you very much.